Alright, so I want to talk about adoption because I keep posting stuff on Facebook and I get nothing but negative comments about it. So, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that now. And then I'm going to have my girlfriend weigh in on this because she's been with me for 3 years and she totally has like the perfect outsider perspective on it. I'm an adoptee. My story is that before I get into the logistics here, my story is my birth mother is, I'm not sure, an addict. My birth father, same deal, alcoholic, more specifically, and then addict. But they, for whatever reason, could not raise me. Does that make them bad people? No. Does that make me a bad person because they couldn't raise me or because I was born to people that did drugs? No, it doesn't make any of us bad. They had reasons in their lives, things that happened to them, decisions they made, and they couldn't raise me. That doesn't make them negative in any way, shape, or form, or to be frowned upon. Had someone offered my mom help in raising me, maybe she could have been able to with, financial support and a place to live. But we'll get into that afterwards. Anyway, so the topic of what I was trying to talk about is every single time we talk about adoption, we never address it from the adoptee's point of view. What I mean by that is there's a stereotype when an adoptee decides, or you know what, like more specifically an adoptee, but this goes for orphans too who just don't have parents in general. Adoptees, when they choose to search for their biological families, that doesn't make them ungrateful. I hear a lot of this. There's a lot of like Jesus complex in adoption where, we like to say that we saved the child, and I just had a comment like that. And I have been told in my life that, I was saved from rotting in foster care. And as a child, I was threatened with, if you're not good, you'll go to foster care. You don't say that to kids. That's number one. Number two, there's nothing bad about being curious about your biology, and why is no one addressing that? It doesn't mean that my parents didn't raise me well because now I want to search for my biological parent. It just means that I'm curious about myself, my genealogy, my heritage, and where my family comes from. I want to know if they come from Italy. Where in Italy do they come from? Like, that type of deal. When I brought it up to my mom that I wanted to search for my birth mother's side of the family, my adopted mom, she took it as a huge insult, like a slap in the face, and got mad like she didn't do something right. And I think that's the adoption industry, and I say industry because it is. It's the selling of babies to infertile people. And I'm sorry if I'm not articulating myself well or glossing it over, but it's true. And the adoption industry tells birth mothers that if they give their child up, they'll, be giving them a better life. And it tells adoptive parents that if you adopt, especially a baby, that, they're not impressionable, they're not going to remember, so it's fine. But how do you think a baby doesn't remember that? And that's where this starts, is I read a book called The Primal Wounds. I actually read it to my girlfriend out loud. And it goes into, and it's why I want to be a midwife. I'm probably going to start midwife training within the next couple of months. And the 9 months you have in the womb count. Spiritually, physically, you're growing. You have an attachment. You are attached to your mother. She made you. So when she gives birth to you and then disappears, like, you don't think that has an effect on the baby? You don't think they remember? Okay, so the hippocampus in the brain isn't, fully functioning and isn't going to remember, but body memories you're going to remember, or, it's emotional memory you'll remember. Hold on, I'm going to read a little bit of this. Oh, that's another thing I want to talk about. Do you guys know that when you get adopted, they change your birth certificate? I got to see my birth certificate with my birth parents' names on it one time, and one time only. And it was at school on accident. I don't know why I had gotten called down to the guidance counselor's office. They passed it around, and I got to see it, and I never forgot my birth mother's name because I knew one day if I wanted to search where I'm from or see if I have any other brothers or sisters or whatever, that I was going to need the name. Once I was adopted, they take your birth certificate, they erase the birth parent names, and they replace them with who adopted you. I don't think that's right. And I don't think it's not that I don't think that's right because, they're not my real parents, which I get all the time. No. They raised me. They're my parents. They get that credit. I love them as if they were my parents. All problems aside. But shouldn't there be... I want to impose an adoption certificate. Or a piece of paper that states you were adopted. Or if, you know, family... When you adopt a cat, do you change its birth certificate? No, you didn't give birth to the cat, and I get that's a stupid, out-of-species comment, but they get to keep more genealogy than we do as humans, and that's sad. What else should I add to this?
I was wondering about that.
And I will read my girlfriend's comment. Can I read it or do you want to read it? What do you read?
I'll read it. That's good.
Okay. And then she could talk about it, and then I'm done ranting and raving. I am not ungrateful for wanting to know where I come from. And it hurts my feelings that, A, when you're adopted, no one thinks about how that affects you. No one even lets you talk about it. And every time you're reminded, like, oh, I saved you, that's making me acknowledge the fact that somebody didn't want me. Not that they didn't want me, but that's how it feels, but that they couldn't keep me. And now I have to not only acknowledge that without actually being able to say that out loud and talk about it, because if I do that, then my adoptive parents are going to take it personally. And this isn't just me. Like, I've read countless stories. That's not right. We just need to have a little bit more compassion, like, think about it from the point of view of the kids that are getting adopted. You're never going to know, you know, if you adopt somebody, you're never going to know what it's like to not have parents. You're always going to have parents. She's about to talk to you. She has parents. Like, come on. Alright. Okay.
Oh, there it is. Hi. I didn't know I was in the video the whole time.
Well, thank you, and here you go, and then I'll chime in. This is really long, but it's important.
No, it's okay. Okay, so I want to read to you something I wrote earlier. So prior to dating Dom, I didn't give a fuck about adoption. I'm not adopted. I have my parents. Why the fuck do I need to worry about adoption? I don't. All I knew was that, you know, kids, for one reason or another, get given up from unfit parents, or maybe they're taken away from unfit parents. Either they're adopted by other family members, maybe foster care, and then somebody else becomes their parent, and la-di-da. So, in the 3 years we've been together, I've learned that being adopted is something like being born premature that you don't just grow out of. If your birth parent separated from you, specifically your mother, it's going to have long-lasting consequences. And with the research, everybody loves science. I say vaccines, people go crazy and go, that's not really science. So I have real science with real facts about the fact that adoptees make up 1/3 of the psychiatric population.
Truth.
Foster children are 5 times more likely to be given psychiatric medication than non-foster children. And there's just all this biological research that indicates that a child, an infant specifically, knows when its mother is gone, like she was saying. And because we don't allow these children to grieve, we don't allow them to mourn their loss of their mothers or biological families, they get stuck. Imagine your parent or loved one dying. My Santa story. Oh, okay. But imagine somebody you care about dying, a family member, a blood relative, and the rest of the family tells you that you can't cry about it. They tell you, get over it. That, well, we love you enough, so you should just really forget about this person because we all love you. And that sounds absurd. So why would you expect an adopted child whose birth parent, for all intents and purposes, is dead to them, would not want to mourn? And we don't allow them to grieve because it's taboo for the adopted child to say, I want to know where I came from. Because adoptive parents have complexes. And you can hate on me all you fucking want, but adoptive parents, not all of them, but many of them, have this personal Jesus Savior complex. I saved you from your heroin addict parents. I saved you from foster care. I saved you. You didn't save this child from anything but more abuse and trauma, and I'm trying to articulate this well.
Wait, you think about that.
I got this. The whole saving thing. I was trying to get this point. When you tell a child, I saved you, you're essentially telling them they were in peril, they were rejected, they needed saving in the first place. And what does that do for somebody's psyche who can't understand what that bond being broken initially meant? Let's see. I said, just because adoptees have families that are caring or drug-free doesn't mean the child feels understood or at peace. I don't think it's fair to say to an adopted person, I don't think it's fair to tell an adopted person that they're a success story because they grew up to be a doctor or some other high-paying position. Because I've heard a lot of, well, they were adopted and they grew up to be a doctor.
I'm not a doctor. Does that mean I'm a failure? Like, come on.
I fucking have parents. I'm not a fucking doctor. But you don't know if that doctor has intimacy issues, abandonment issues, if they have difficulty getting close to people or living with other people. You don't know these things. And I also don't think it's fair to say that, you know, hold on, I'm trying to read what I wrote here. I was reading about birth mothers. Oh, true. As far as birth mothers go, typically they're experiencing symptoms of PTSD. This can occur immediately after the separation or years later upon reuniting with the child. Birth mothers and their stories are grossly glossed over by the adoption industry. And I understand the logic of trying to give the child a better life, but biologically speaking, the most healthy and thriving a child can be is with its birth mother.
Well, can you explain why, like, biologically?
Okay, so biologically, you're hardwired for your mom. You're hardwired for her scent, her touch, her voice, all of it.
There was a study done that birth mothers can tell their baby by, like, the scent of their head or something. Like, that's real, that's true. They're in tune with them emotionally.
Yeah.
Like, her mom knows her, like, and I think it's fascinating to watch, but, like, her mom knows her in a way that, like, no one's ever known me.
Sometimes she says the shit I'm thinking out loud, and it freaks me out, because I'm like, how did you do that? These are beyond the scope of science. You cannot quantify the mother-child bond in terms of science because it doesn't completely understand it yet. There's an air of mysticism here that people are failing to notice because they need the concrete black and white of, you don't have that parent anymore, I'm your parent, I love you, you should be fine. And I find that often when adoptive parents are confronted, they take it very personally. They take it as like, oh, an insult, like they're not good parents, like they don't care, and oh, well, fuck this. Like, it's terrible. They all take it personally. And I read a really good quote, and it was, adoption is a cure for childlessness, not infertility. So if you're infertile, that's a whole separate issue that you need to deal with before you just go thinking you can remedy it by going to the adoption agency and picking up the kid. Your infertility, your barrenness, is something you need to deal with. I understand that it's probably horrific to want to conceive a child and biologically be unable to do so. I'm sure that has its own psychological effects and its own traumas on your body and your mind for not being able to do what it's quote-unquote supposed to do. Making faces? Yeah. Let me see. I said some other
wait,
stuff.
can I interject?
Yeah,
do
whatever you want. It's your
so
video.
What she said about the birth mother, like, thing with the PTSD, I met my mom when I was 19 for the first time. I have not seen her since. So, like, just because you go and search for a biological family doesn't mean you're going to be best friends with them. Some birth mothers want nothing to do with their kids. But what I was getting at is I have a few personal stories that I would love to share. Is every time after that, even up until, like, a few months ago when I would talk to my birth mother, all she would do was cry every single time I called. Why is that? And then I was put in such a position that, like, I didn't want to call because I was going to make her cry. Because she's going to feel bad or something. Because she, I don't know, she, like, feels bad, but, like, I don't know exactly what it is.
That's that whole PTSD upon reuniting thing?
But, like, it just made me feel really guilty because, like, I didn't want her to feel bad, and she just goes through something every single time I talk to her. And it's, like, a raw nerve, and that doesn't just go for her, but it goes for, you know, my adoptive family when, you know, now I'm in touch with that. It's just screwed up. And the other thing I wanted to just tell a story about was when I was a kid, like, there was no one taught me any of this at this point about, you know, the stereotypes of adoption, or, like, I hadn't lived enough through it. But I did know, and this was before I was adopted, I was living with my grandmother. I couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. And I know one year for Christmas, I told her the story, I wrote a Christmas letter. Well, okay, I wrote my first Christmas letter with, like, adults present and, you know, whatever, and we mailed it. And then I had a secret letter that I kept in my desk drawer that, it was, Dear Santa, can I get a picture of my birth mother? I was young enough to, you know, want to know what that person looked like because I didn't have them to mirror every day. And I was with part of, you know, my paternal family. Like, it was my grandmother, so I wasn't completely missing every single biological aspect. But the point is, I felt guilty that I wrote this, so I would hide it, and then I snuck it into the mailbox when no one was looking the next day. The mailman took it, but like, why at such a young age was I aware of the fact that my wanting to know this was going to make other people upset or angry or whatever the reaction was? And I felt bad, so I was like, okay, I just won't let them know. And then, you know, think of my disappointment when I don't get a picture. So, like, that's sad.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I think it's also sad because you made me think about it. Her little brother has not been informed. He's, what, 12 now? 13?
He's gonna be 13, I think.
Okay. He's 12 or 13. He's pretty older.
No,
12? He's somewhere between 11 and 13. He's not little. Either way, his entire life, he has not been told that his big sister is in fact adopted.
And I understand why they did that, because, you know, like, it doesn't matter. I know it doesn't matter. But people ask anyway, and it shouldn't be kept a secret. When my mom found out that I was telling people, like, about my story, she was angry. I got yelled at and grounded. I remember getting grounded and being told, like, you don't tell people that. Why? That's my story. You own up to that. That's mine to tell. You don't get to tell me not to tell my story.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. No, that's very good. So I had some thoughts before, because she posted a thing on Facebook, this whole thread ignited, and it was mostly people being douchebags, and being like, rah, rabble, rabble, adoption, rabble, rabble, I saved, rabble, rabble. Like, it's just fucking fire and brimstone. Nobody wants to hear any outside perspective, and at no point, all the things we have iterated to you, we put in the comments, and I'd be happy to fucking post screenshots if you want. But somebody responded to all the things I said, because I pretty much read them to you. They were like, you're right. Let's not adopt any more kids because they may have a bad life. Whereas letting them rot in foster care will result in a bad life.
But wait, and what quantifies a bad or a good life? That's another thing.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Money apparently quantifies as a good life.
Yeah, like I don't want
I'm
to say
getting
that.
there. I'm getting there.
I was sold to the highest bidder. Like,
most adoptive children are. Oh, you have a lot of money? That means you can provide a financially stable home. But providing
I'm not ungrateful, though. Like, I travel all over the world, and I know I would never have gotten to do that in other situations. But it's not
enough. Money can't buy me love. Can't buy me love. Okay? So here, let me finish this.
Sorry.
So, whereas letting them rot in foster care will result in a bad life. And especially the kids in third world countries who don't have clean water. Let's definitely not help those kids because people on Facebook think it's a bad idea. Fuck this. End quote. So, I took that in for a second because this person is clearly very hostile about the situation.
He's very angry.
Because they adopted a heroin-addicted baby and they feel like they...
I was born addicted, and I heard the same thing my entire life.
We saved
you, and you're gonna, if you go down whatever path, you're gonna end up like your birth father, on drugs and an alcoholic. And I never forgot that. And just because my parents had addictions doesn't mean, okay, genetics. But I chose differently. I don't have an addiction. I don't drink alcohol. I haven't touched alcohol.
Look into epigenetics. Just because your parents do something does not mean you're going to do it.
I was born 1 pound, 8 ounces, polydrug addicted to heroin, crack, and cocaine. Does that mean, and upon leaving or getting kicked out of my house, my adoptive father looked at me, spit on me, okay, and told me we should have left you in the hospital. Now,
nice, right?
Any choice you have to save somebody, why would you ever turn around and say such a thing to them?
Yeah.
Like,
kind of fucked up.
Now you remind me that not only they, the first set of parents might not have wanted me, but you don't want me.
But you chose to want me, and you're acting as though you shouldn't have done it because it was a regret. And that's kind of fucked up for somebody who's trying to carve out a stable identity.
Yeah, like, you can't regret a person.
Alright, so, this person said all that, and I was like, do you see how I bring up the perspective of an adoptee? Because I was just trying to address how adoptees might feel. And the adoptive parent takes it personally. You'll never know what it's like to lose your birth parents. No one is saying that providing loving, stable homes is a bad thing. But the system currently at work, and the culture it works inside of, is broken. Which is creating broken children whose voices are drowned out by people who won't listen to any other perspective because you have to go on believing whatever it is you need to believe to feel good about what you've done. Yes. It is a wonderful thing to show love to a child who needs it, but it is not okay to do all of that while completely erasing and overshadowing the grief and trauma of a biological loss. Sometimes a kid can have a rich, awesome, happy adoptive family and still feel like garbage because they aren't allowed to acknowledge their biological roots. Do you know what it must feel like for a kid to have to make a family tree project, knowing they're adopted, knowing they can't find their true genetic line, while the other kids can? You cannot love away the devastating effects of birth trauma and loss. For an infant, it's pretty much the equivalent of the birth mother dying. They need time to grieve that part of their life before they can move on. And they can move on, but only if we reshape our attitudes, beliefs, and culture to allow those children to explore these feelings openly and honestly without taking it fucking personally. And that's really all I'm asking for, is for people to truly understand the biological connection between a parent and a child, and to understand that the loss of that connection is traumatic, is something that needs to be grieved, and can be overcome with all sorts of love and support, but it takes acknowledging the fact that no, you are not the biological parent. You never will be. But you can do a damn good job trying to raise this child and give it everything it deserved to have, but was unable to. And furthermore, birth mothers wouldn't have to give up their kids for adoption so much if resources existed to help them get into positions where they can take care of their kids. Foster families are given money to take in foster kids.
Yeah, we pay foster kids.
Why aren't birth mothers who are unfit being given resources to help keep them in a state?
What about that study that did that?
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it. Because
there was a study that actually gave money to birth mothers to try and let them, you know, do it on their own. And they found that the relationship was more secure, the living situation, just the bond. And they, you know, they said we should be doing this. And adoption rates dropped. But because there's so many infertile people, we continue adopting children. And that's another thing. Why do we have so much infertility? No one wants to address that or look at that.
That's not natural for human beings.
That's a whole
every now and again. Sure.
That's a whole nother video, though. But like, just because you're infertile or what'd you call it? Childless, doesn't mean you can, you know, run around and not think about this. And unfortunately, and I'm going to touch on this, and this is sensitive. This goes for gay couples. You're getting a sperm donor, then you're taking biology away from a child. I just read an article last night about a guy
in Australia
who was one of the first sperm donor babies. He's now like in his mid-30s, and he said his parents were wonderful. His father, he did not come from his sperm,
he calls him his known father, his social father.
His social father, yeah. He said he did a great job raising him. He loves him very much, but his father taught him to follow the truth, and the truth is that that's not his genetic line. And he explained the whole thing where, like, if I die, my children want to look for their genealogy, or, you know, where they come from, or, you know, their heritage. They're going to be led on a different path.
That's not their biology.
Yeah.
And think about it. Our entire culture, like marriage, everything we've ever done from the dawn of Industrial Revolution, when we started keeping track of shit, marriage was a fucking way to keep economical ties, to see where things were passed through in your genealogical line. To break that up breaks up an entire history of a family, where you come from, how you emigrated to America, because we're all fucking immigrants. Like,
wait, and this touches on what can we do about this, though?
Okay.
Because let's look at the positive here, okay? So you can love the child you adopt, you can raise them perfectly. It does, you know, like, good job, you're awesome. I hope you make some child very happy, and I hope they're happy. But what can we do? We can acknowledge adoptees' feelings. I read a book that said you can acknowledge the fact that they lost their mother at a young age. When you find a puppy or like an abandoned animal outside, don't you feel bad? When a fucking bird falls out of the nest, don't they say don't touch it or the mother won't come back? And we all don't touch it. Whether that's true or not, we know, like, the mom is important. Don't fucking take it. Same with baby bunnies. Why is it with humans the minute they're born? Well, you know, Sally needs a baby. Well, this nice gay couple. I'm with a woman. I understand the fucking fact, you know, like, we can't have a kid. So why do they get to take a baby from a human? You wouldn't take it from the animal outside. That's not natural.
Yeah. I'm not particularly religious, but I don't like the idea of playing God, because it's giving you the instant gratification to a problem that biologically you're not capable of solving. And I understand how adoption might be a remedy to this, but I think it's just, there's too much. And no, I don't agree with artificial insemination or any of that, because in 20 to 30 years, maybe less, that person is going to go, where's the other half of my DNA?
Or if you're going to artificially inseminate, I think you should have the father in the child's life. I get you want to be with a woman. You can still be with a woman, but let your kid know who its father is.
And then people start arguing
or
polyamorous.
Yeah, or just leave it open.
But the
you know
whole
what I'm saying?
point
So
of
that
this
way they
video
can get to know them.
Is to call for people to adapt their perspectives. We've had the same
Look out
outlook.
for us.
Yeah.
Why is no one looking out for the adopted
Nobody
kid?
cares about what the adoptive person is perspective and what they've experienced. They go, just be grateful somebody loved you.
I am grateful.
You look at biological children and be like, well, you should be grateful that your parents didn't give you up. Like, nobody does that to biological kids. And it's kind of fucked up.
Full-term abortion, right? That's what they call it?
Partial birth?
No. We read that.
Oh, somebody called themselves a 9-month abortion, meaning even though they were born, they felt like an abortion because their bond with the mother was terminated anyway, which in a very literal sense, an abortion is terminating the bond between mother and child.
Oh, but let's not get into abortion now because then we'll have
That's a whole other fucking topic.
Alright, but thanks for listening. My goal as an adoptee is to pave the way in adoption certificates. Or you know, they call it a forever family when you adopt a cat. What about like a forever family certificate? Instead, you know, like I have an adoption day, or we called it family. We haven't celebrated in a minute, but family day, September 21st. I remember that. It's not something I forget, but
I just want to change the attitudes of our culture. That's it. I want if you can keep adopting kids, that's fine. Also,
no one's saying don't adopt
put
kids.
the adoption industry under a microscope. Look into these people, these agencies, because sometimes they say they're going to do one thing.
for birth mothers, because what about those mothers that give birth or decide at the last minute that maybe they actually want to do want to keep the kid?
Yeah, what
and
about mothers
guilted.
who are pressured into adoption, or you know, teenage mothers?
Yeah.
Who are pressured. Oh, you can't take care of this. You can't do that. Well, why don't you give her some fucking resources so maybe she can? This is our species.
You don't have to punish people because they chose to have children out of wedlock or because they didn't have enough money to raise a child. That's foolishness. Like, if you know what, maybe it was an accident and you got pregnant and then you decide you do want to raise this kid. Okay, well, why? It's a form of birth control money. Money is. It's telling you who can raise a kid and who can't. And I'm sorry, but just because you have money doesn't mean you're capable of raising a child. Some people shouldn't adopt a highway with someone let alone a child. And it's true. But this video is 30 minutes, so we're gonna go now.
Yeah, it is kind of.
I hope you enjoyed our rant. And if you have adoption stories or
share
any ideas about how to make this better, share them. Make a video and tag me. Add me on Facebook. I will post the link somewhere over there at my name on Facebook. And speak up about it, because this is not an issue that's spoken up about, and every time I speak up about it, I just get sad.
There's just so much shame and secrecy around adoption, almost like it's, we don't talk about the fact that you're adopted, or did Johnny find out he's adopted yet? I'm adopted! Like, there's these horrible associations, or, you know, like a redheaded stepchild, all these ideas that, like, if you're not biological, you're somehow inferior if your biological family rejected you. And maybe that's some sort of inherent knowledge from our biology being like, where's your biological family kind of a thing. But I think there's a lot of taboo and secrecy, shame, guilt, and anger.
Wait a minute. I read something because I'm sitting here being like, yeah, well, I was rejected by my adopted family and my birth family. But also, what I read was that is also like something the adoptee will do, is over the course of their life, they will test each relationship after that to be like, are you going to stick around because you're just going to do what they did?
There's no greater loss than your birth mother.
My dad would always say that. He would be like, oh, you know, you just don't love us or whatever. Like, I like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, do you think I understood what it meant, like, you don't love me? I'm going, yeah, I do. I don't understand. Like, I'm trying, or, you know, like, I was just difficult, but I didn't know why I was difficult. I wasn't a kid that acted out as much as I acted out on myself, but it doesn't matter. These kids are going to have some sort of a problem, and even if they don't exhibit a problem, that doesn't mean there's not a problem. Just because they're a doctor, or they went to college, or they graduated, doesn't mean internally something's not going on. Like, that's ridiculous.
And apparently adoptive parents report fewer instances with their children, meaning the adoptive parents fails to recognize things that are off in the adoptive kid, or they report them less. because when I'm sick, even if I'm just like a touch of sick, even before I know I'm sick, my mom's like, "You're sick." And I'm like, "What?" I'm just okay. She's like, "You're getting sick. Go in bed." She knows these things before I do because she's so in sync with my biology that she can call these. We watch this great thing. Women in Africa holding their newborn babies they know when the baby has to pee and they just let it go pee right there. There was a reporter who was like, "How did you know your baby had to go pee right now?" And she looked at him like, why wouldn't you know that?" So I think we really grossly underestimate the importance of biology, the importance of somatic body memories. These things really impact a person and shape them throughout their life. And it's unfair to say that.
And the same goes for incubator babies. And I will say this, and I will tag this. Babies born premature that are stuck in an incubator for a month, a week, or whatever, they wonder where the fuck their mom went. Because when a baby's born, and I'm studying midwifery, I've read a lot of books. No, I do not have a degree yet. But
I have a degree.
But I have read a lot about this. When a baby's born, you're supposed to put it on the mom's chest because it'll sound similar from womb to chest, the heartbeat.
And then they suckle immediately.
Exactly, and then you breastfeed to initiate the oxytocin and the bond. When that doesn't happen, even if it's just because, mom's bleeding too much from a cesarean, or something goes wrong, or
mom dips out because, she might get arrested.
And just anything, or especially if, again, I was talking about incubator, you put the baby in an incubator, the same response will happen. So you might even, I've read that you'll see, like, the same effects in those children, like, growing up, later in life. They just feel like someone abandoned them in the first few moments of life. I don't know where I was going with that.
You were really enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, and then I forgot.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Alright, well, we should go, because this is 31 minutes long. It's like a mini documentary of us talking.
Yeah.
Share your stories.
Adoption.
Speak up. Don't be scared. Project Speak Up.
It's a broken system. We gotta fix it. The only way we're gonna fix it
is together.
To fucking talk about it. So let's talk about it. And let's try to change our attitudes. Like most things in history, industry shapes our ideas because they're the ones selling us the product and telling us how to behave. Well, adoption is a business. It's an industry. And it taught us all how to behave and think about adoption. And
now
I think it's time we redefine that.
Adoptees and people on the other side and see and redefine it in a better light to help everybody in the adoption triad, not just the adoptive parents. And that doesn't mean I have something against adoptive parents or gay couples. It
Very
just means
noble what you're doing.
You need to be honest to the child.
With yourself?
You can't
about why you're adopting?
Yeah, to yourself and to that kid. You owe it to the child to be honest to them. Part of love is truth and honesty is respect. Like, seriously.
Yeah, respect me enough to tell me where I come from. It doesn't make you inadequate or less as a parent.
I'm going to love you just as much.
And if anything, your keeping secrets from me makes for a whole host of
Then what's wrong with me that
questions.
You have to keep a secret? I remember thinking that when they wouldn't tell my brother. They were like, we're just not going to tell him. I was like, but there's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. If you have no shame in adopting a child, you should have no shame in
speaking about it.
Not only speaking about it, what's the word I want? Rallying behind your adoptive child so that way all their emotional needs are met. And if you're adopting a kid, you should probably understand this isn't your happy family. Like, we had a baby. Yeah, you're going to have some issues. That child, it could be 1 month old. It needs to grieve.
I feel bad that I was such a handful for my adoptive parents. I really do in hindsight. I was a fucking mess. Yeah, I really was. I was, like, cutting myself. I wasn't eating. Like, it's not an easy thing to take in a kid who, has emotional deficits. But you can't blame them. You can't blame them for not being able to love you correctly or complying or listening or acting a certain way.
You can't ever blame
I never knew that I was doing these things until I read about it later, and now I do. I feel bad. But I feel bad for myself as well as my parents because, like, no one acknowledged the loss. And if we acknowledge the loss, maybe children would have an easier time if they were allowed to think about it, to grieve, to talk about it, or to express that to their adoptive parents. Maybe we'd all feel better instead of brushing it under the rug.
We all know that if you have a problem or a trauma and you keep it to yourself, it's going to eat you alive. Culturally forcing people to keep this part of themselves a secret, what the fuck do you think that's doing to people? Think! Open your eyes. New perspectives. Changing the world.
We have a drum circle to get to. Thanks for listening.
Bye.